So allow me to introduce my father, Davy the Punk. And this story is absolutely true, for the most part. All horse players die broke, in shiny pants and a tattered coat. It's bad beats and hard cases, a pair of eights up against a pair of aces. You can dope the race, but you can't dope the races like Savonarola wrote. All horse players die broke. Hey buddy, you got a spare smoke? It's the summer of 1956. I'm sitting with my father in the bleachers above first base in Maple Leaf Stadium, the old ballpark on the shore of Lake Ontario. Davy is reading the newspaper. I'm giving him a fervent play-by-play account of the game between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Havana Sugar Kings. I'm 10. Gradually, through the early innings, we're joined by one, then another of my father's pals. The deal is that when the friends arrive, my color commentary has to stop, but that was okay with me because I love hearing these guys talk. In those days, as Joe pointed out, Toronto was known as Toronto the Good, but the Toronto these guys know is tantalizingly bad. Did you see Benny Kaufman died? Benny the Scheuke, the bootlegger, ran a book out of the little butcher shop in the back alley off Kensington. Yeah, Benny's gone, Alev Hashalem. You know, I don't think he ever got pinched. He had a hell of an operation. You could place a bet, have a drink, and buy a chicken. Did he really sell the chickens? Yeah, they were good kosher chickens. But he always kept a few in the back in case of a raid. He'd have one of the kids out on the alley, out at the street corner, and he'd whistle if the cop turned into the alley, and then the old lady, the boo-boo, would come downstairs. They'd throw the whiskey bottles in her apron, put a couple of chickens on top. She'd shuffle down the alley, smiling and nodding at the cop. Benny stuffed his slips up the ass of one of the chickens. They never caught him. Yeah, they did. Herbie Thurston pinched him, remember? Harry Thurston's boy who became a cop. Nah, you're all mixed up. Herbie never pinched Benny. The guy he pinched was Murray the Rug. And the old dry cleaners on Dovercourt. Exactly. Herbie used to go in with his father when the old man placed his bets. But then when he became a cop, he went to Murray. He said, Murray, I'm a policeman now, and I will arrest you if I have to. It's time you retire. Of course, Murray didn't listen because they could never get him, because they could never find his slips. But Herbie knew from his father that Murray kept them under his toupee, so he nailed them. My father, meanwhile, sits there reading the paper. The conversation flows by him like water around a rock. What was the name of the guy they busted over and over and over? Silence. Nobody remembers. And then a new voice says, Snooky Schneider. It was Snooky Schneider. The voice is my father's. When Davy speaks, it's as if he were a king. Heads turn. This is because he speaks so rarely, and because when he does, he's a natural-born storyteller. Well, he folds his newspaper, none too quickly, and begins to recount how Arnie the Schnook Schneider was busted for bookmaking 67 times, every one a first offense. Well, after that fateful conversation at the United Baker's Dairy restaurant, I called my cousin Benny. Benny's 20 years older than I am. And I asked him if he knew anything about Davy the Punk. Well, he laughed and he told me this story. I got married in June of 1947, and your cousin Tevye got married 2 days later. And we decided, the four of us, would honeymoon together in New York City, where we could see Joe DiMaggio and the New York Yankees. They had a game against the Detroit Tigers and their great Jewish star, Hank Greenberg. My father-in-law loaned us his car for the trip. This was a big deal for 4 young just married kids. I was still in university. Tev was an apprentice plumber. We were as poor as church mice and about as naive. I thought we'd just walk up to Yankee Stadium and get tickets in the bleachers. But your Uncle High set us straight. But then he said if anyone could get tickets, it was Davy. Well, I was reluctant to call your father. Your father was not a friendly man, and we all knew he had some shady connections. But what could I do? I called him and he was very nice. He said he'd fix us up. He gave me a number to call when we got to New York. No name, just a number. Well, we drove all day. We finally got to Manhattan at night. We checked into a dumpy hotel with Murphy beds. Got up in the morning and I called the number. And a voice answered and said, yeah, that's all. Well, I said who I was, and Davy said to call, and he said, wait. And then another voice finally came on, sort of a hoarse whisper, and said, you're the honeymooners, right? Well, yeah, I said we were, and he said, everything is arranged. There's 4 tickets in your name at the stadium. You don't have to pay for them. It's all taken care of. Well, I wasn't expecting that. I said, gee, that's terrific, thank you, or something. And he said, you got plans for after the game. As if we had plans. He said, you want to go to the Copacabana? I said, well, thanks, but we're on a pretty tight budget. He said, kid, you don't pay for nothing. Just tip good. And after, you can go to catch the second show at the Latin Quarter. Dress nice. And he hung up. So that afternoon, we took the subway out to the Bronx. We got up to Yankee Stadium. We picked up our tickets. They're in the 4th row, right behind third base, right behind where the president sits for the World Series. Hank Greenberg hit a home run. We went back to the hotel. We changed and dressed up as best we could, and we went to the Copacabana. And I got there, told them who I was, and it's, yes, sir, Mr. Bosson, right away, Mr. Bosson. And just like in the movies, they took a table from the back, they put it in front of the front row, they put a tablecloth on it, and that's where we sat. The chorus line practically kicked us. Sophie Tucker sang right in front of us. Well, a few years go by, and I'm watching the Kefauver hearings on television. They were the biggest thing on TV. Everybody watched them. Senator Kefauver was grilling these crooks and crooked politicians, and all of a sudden, I hear a voice I recognize. I called Tevye right away. I said, Tev, turn on the TV. It's the guy. It's the guy I talked to in New York. You know whose seats we were sitting in at the ball game? No, he says, who? I said, the Prime Minister of the mob, Frank Costello. That's who.